I'm just going to run through with you how to do a dropped stitch elongated type stocking stitch pattern in knitting. So you've got this longer stitch which actually is the length of 2 rows as opposed to 1 row. So that's it on my cast on edge. In mid row or mid garment, this is kind of what it looks like. I absolutely love this stitch for summery garments. I recommend doing this stitch on a plant fibre such as linen or cotton. It doesn't work quite so well on wools just because the wool is slightly fluffier and it doesn't have the weight to stretch that stitch out. So what I'm using here is a linen. This is a linen ribbon yarn. So it's quite drapey. You can also use something like a cotton yarn. And I'm going to use a needle size a bit bigger than recommended for the yarn, just because I want that kind of lacy effect. Now it doesn't matter how many you cast on, this can be worked on any number of stitches. You don't even need an edge stitch. In fact, it's important that you work this on your edge stitch and you don't kind of work a selvage of garter stitch or a slip stitch. So I've cast on 16 stitches and I've just worked 4 rows in garter stitch. So that's just knit every row. Now to go on to our drop stitch elongation pattern. Every stitch, first, last and middle stitches are worked exactly the same. So we're going to pop our needle in just as if to knit. Then with our working yarn we're going to go around the needle twice. Now if you want a longer stitch you can do more than twice. If you wanted a really long stitch that stretched over 4 rows, then you go round 4 times. But I'm just going to go round twice and then pull it through and knock that stitch off. Now you've got 2 loops on your right hand needle from that 1 stitch that came off your left hand. Again, in, around twice, pop through to the front and knock it off. And continue that all the way across the row. You'll have 2 loops per stitch. Don't worry too much about counting it, just make sure that you have done 2 wraps or 3 or 4 per stitch. I'm just on my last 2. And the last stitch, wrap twice. There we go. So we've got a lot of loops on this working needle now. Now the second part of this pattern is to drop these loops. So we've only got 1 loop per stitch again. And I'm going to work garter stitch. So I'm going to knit this row again. So I just essentially knitted the row and I'm going to knit this one too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit that first loop, not both, just that first one, yarn around, pull through, then as I drop that one off I'm also going to let the next loop drop off. So through, yarn around, pop that through, drop that loop off, drop the next loop off. You can just get into a good rhythm of it across the whole row. And again the last stitch. And just pull those loops out just so they're all nice and even. and you can see that it's stretched that one stitch across 2 rows. One of the reasons it's important to make sure you do also work your edge stitches, unless the pattern says otherwise, say if you're doing a scarf or such like, is if you were to have knitted this one as per usual, it would pucker at the end, and you want to make sure it is the same length the whole way across. Now you could go into another row of the drop stitch. I like to do 2 rows of garter stitch just to really cement those long stitches in and give a bit more of a contrast. So I've worked 2 repeats of the dropped long stitch, and I love this effect. Again, it's better for plant fibres, heavy fibres, silk, that would work too, just because you could really do with that weight to pull the drop stitch down. With a wool it would kind of get a bit bunched up and slightly lost, but give it a go. I hope you have found this video helpful. If you have, I would really appreciate it if you could just drop a like on it, and I will see you again very soon. Happy crafting! Bye!